I'm the coordinator of the MESA program, which stands for Mathematics, Engineering, Science Achievement. And it's a program that provides services for underrepresented students in math-based majors. And our goal is to have the students transfer, get their bachelor's degrees in their STEM majors. Yeah, that's interesting. Most students come in, already saying they're interested in STEM. I do sometimes do classroom presentations. A lot of times I tell my own story, and so students will come in sometimes and talk after that and say, well, I wanted to be a doctor, but I didn't think I could make it. And so a lot of it is showing students people just like them that used to be students. And so, for example, I had a student come in once, and he was in pre-algebra, and he wanted to be an engineer, and he was just like, that's going to take so long. And I actually was able to show him on LinkedIn former students who are engineers who started in Math 30. So that makes it more tangible to say, okay, someone else actually did it, I can do it too. And just to say it's going to take as long as it's going to take, and that's okay. Don't measure yourself against another student or anything like that. You'll get there as long as you just stay focused and utilize the services that are available to you. I think regardless of which fields of STEM students are interested in, partnerships are really important. Being resourceful. So a lot of times students come out of high school, I know I did, not necessarily looking at their teachers as partners. They almost sometimes look at their teachers as adversaries, especially if they don't get the grade they want. You hear a lot, if students don't do well, they'll complain about the professor. I like students to look at professors as resources and look at everything available to them as a resource, whether it's the MESA Center, a summer internship, a professional development experience. These are all resources that you add to what I like to call your toolkit that can equip you for success. And so working with other students is really important, which is why the MESA Center has tables. It doesn't have cubicles or anything like that. And it's not to say that there's not time to study alone, but we all benefit from the ideas of others, right? So you might have learned a certain way to solve a certain type of problem in an earlier math class that you carry on, but another student might have learned another technique, and there's a point where you could benefit from understanding that technique that the other student learned. So I think it's about partnerships and being resourceful. A couple things. One, it lets you see, is this really something I want to do, right? So a lot of times, for example, a student that's interested in science may not know, do I want to go a PhD route, or do I want to go in more of a medical degree route? And sometimes doing that research, they'll say, well, research is not for me. I'd rather not be in a lab. I'd rather be more in a hospital setting, working with patients. And to be able to get both of those experiences, right, and understand which one is better suited for you is really important. I heard a story of a student that went all the way to starting medical school, had never actually worked in a hospital setting, and the first time he saw blood, he passed out.
Oh, no.
Right? It would have been nice to know that a long time ago. That's not to say he couldn't complete medical school, but maybe he would have gone into some different specialty like dermatology or something, as opposed to emergency medicine, where there's going to be a lot of blood and bodily fluids along. So the sooner you know that from experience, the better. Also shadowing physicians or shadowing the engineers or whatever field you're interested in learning that. So for example, I had a student years ago that said she wanted to be a surgeon, but she doesn't like to get up early. Surgeries are scheduled early, right? You fast all night and then you come in early for surgery, unless this is an emergency surgery. And so surgeons tend to have early days. And she didn't know that, she hadn't thought about that. And so it just gave her something to think about. If you want to be a surgeon, it's fine, but your days are going to tend to start early. So that's just good information to know. So it's kind of a low risk, maybe 3 months during the summer or something. It's a relatively low risk investment to kind of help see if this is something that I want to do. The other thing is it can often help you make sense of some classes that you've taken. I've had students come back from summer experience saying, hey, now I understand why oh, chem is so important, or this physics class is so important, or materials, or whatever it is. And that's really important, because sometimes as students, it just seems like you're taking all these classes, and one day you'll get a degree and somebody's supposed to hire you, but you don't always understand how it all fits together. So a lot of times, this is where I think going to a national conference is really powerful. So for example, a few years ago, I took some students to the National Society of Black Engineers conference. It was kind of a overwhelming experience in some sense. There were several thousand people there from all over the country, even though outside the country. So that in and of itself can be intimidating. But one of the things that was powerful when you sit down next to somebody at lunch, because they have career fairs there, that says, hey, I just got an internship. We had a student that actually got 4 internship offers at the conference. So that inspires other students to say, okay, I can do that. If you went up and talked to Northrop Grumman, I can go talk to Northrop Grumman. And so just instead of just having somebody stand in front of you saying, hey, I got an internship at Intel, I'm thinking of a particular student now, to actually get a little more into detail on the story. I went to a career fair at Sac State. I was nervous like everybody else. I didn't think I would stand out. You know, I gave the person my resume. We had a brief conversation. 2 weeks later, I had a phone call for an interview. You know, I was shocked. And then going back and asking that person, why did you interview me? Why did you decide? I know you talked to a lot of students. And then taking that as a learning experience to say, I enjoyed our conversation. That was basically it. I really enjoyed our conversation. Your personality made me think you might be somebody that would fit in with the culture here at Intel. And that's why I wanted to follow up with you in an interview. As we're doing, your research is important. What's the culture like at this company versus that company, this setting versus that setting? Because ultimately what you want is something that's a good fit for you. And there's a lot of resources, I think, that allow students to do that. That's why, for example, in the MESA class, I have people that come in, and more often than not, I bring in former students that were students. I think when you have someone that says, hey, I work at Google, I used to be a CRC student, that carries more weight than somebody that says, I used to work at Google, but you know, I didn't go to community college, I just went straight to Stanford, you know, I'm all that. And so having people that are doing what our students want to do, that were here at one point, I think makes it much more tangible.